Hello, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Just Own You Summit. Today we have Tracey Ferrin. She is a wife and mother of 4 and an author of a beautiful book called Up Struggle. I'm not going to give any of it away because I want her to share her story and why it's so important that we share our own unique stories. So I'm so glad to have Tracey with us today.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. So, Tracey, go ahead, give them the scoop. Tell us where this book came from, why you're so passionate about women, everything. Not giving anything away.
So, okay, I'll just kind of back it up a little bit and start with, we all have struggles, right? And I knew they weren't going anywhere. And so I kind of started to, no, it doesn't matter if you're a good person, right? Or if you have a nice car or a big home or what, we all are going to have struggles. And so I was like, oh, so struggles aren't going to go anywhere. Maybe I need to get comfortable with them and use them better. And I've been through so many different struggles, like just you name it, I've probably been through it or something close. But my biggest struggle, I call it my ultimate struggle. I always tell people everyone needs to know what their ultimate struggle is. And my ultimate struggle was when I was 18, I was diagnosed with osteosarcoma, which is a cancer, and it's a rare cancer, it's bone cancer. But what made it more complicated was I was pregnant and I was married, and I already had a 10-month-old at the time when I found out. And just, cancer in general is tricky, right? It's complicated. But then you throw being pregnant on top of it. And my doctors advised me, because this was almost 20 years ago, right? And my doctor's like, look, we don't have any research of women who have undergone chemotherapy pregnant who have delivered a healthy baby. Our recommendation is you need to abort, And so I was like, and I was like 5 months pregnant. I was just like weeks away from being in my 3rd trimester. They did want to, I'm not going to say what state, but they did want to, I would have had to travel to different states to follow through with it. And I was just like, and whether it's right or wrong, medical, I know there's medical reasons. There's so many reasons that would be advised. I'm not here to say whether it's right or wrong. This is just my story. But for me, it felt just not right in my heart. I mean, I knew it was a girl. I had done the ultrasound. I had a bump. I'm just like, I just can't. And so I was like, well, you know what? Let's just hold off on chemo. We'll just have a healthy baby. And then I'll start chemo. And they're like, oh no, girl, you don't got time for that. Like, your cancer is aggressive. Like, if you wait, that's the difference of life and death. And so I'm like, okay, well, that's not going to work. They're like, look, I'm not aborting. We've got to figure it out. And so I said, okay, well, if you wait till your 3rd trimester and then we start chemo, your baby will probably, live through it, but we can't guarantee you what complications she'll have. Like, we can't guarantee that she'll live, but most likely she will, because when you hit your 3rd trimester, the baby's pretty much developed. It's just about getting bigger. And so they're like, and I was like, I can do that. So it was only a couple of weeks that I had to wait till I hit my 3rd trimester, and I started chemo. Well, after my first round of chemo, my husband left me. And that was hard. That was really hard. I mean, I'm pregnant, I'm young, I'm sick. And then my support system, so I'm gonna get all emotional. I was like, I have not gotten emotional a while over it. It's just a lot, right, to come down on someone. And he left, and that was hard. So I filed for a divorce, because as hard as that was, I thought, okay, true colors come out when we're tested, right? And having grown and matured, I don't blame him. I mean, that was a lot to ask of him as well. It wasn't just me. It was hard for him, and I get that. So at this point in my life, I hold no grudge. I have no hate towards him. But it was hard. It doesn't take away, just because I'm at peace now, about it and have forgiven him, it doesn't take away the pain that I've gone through, which is why I can still get emotional, because I'm not that I'm reliving it, but I'm like, oh, golly, that was so hard. I remember how hard that was, you know? And so I did a couple rounds of chemo being pregnant, and then they wanted to take her as early as they could without major complications to being preemie. And so they took her 6 weeks early. And the thing is she was born at 3 pounds, 10 ounces, but she was completely healthy. The only problem that she had was she was tiny, and they can't send babies home that are that tiny. I want to say they wanted her to reach 5 pounds, if I remember correctly. And then they sent her home. So she was in the NICU for, I think, about 4 weeks. And she was able to come home. So after I delivered her, I had what's called limb salvage surgery. So it's trying to save my limb, because a lot of people with osteosarcoma, they lose their limbs. That's just very common. And so they were trying to save it. So it was over a 10-hour surgery, very intense. I have a scar from my hip to my ankle, and I've got a scar on the inside of my thigh. So it was a pretty intense surgery, recovery, and everything. And I have a newborn, and I have a daughter, and all this stuff is going on. But you know, I'm healing, and it was weeks later that they hit me with, after I had her get chemo and surgery and right back to chemo. And the thing I think a lot of people don't understand about chemo, they're like, oh, it's medicine, it's healing. I'm like, no, it's poison. Chemo is poisoning I am choosing to poison my body. It's just choosing the lesser of the evil, cancer, chemo. You know what I mean? And so every round of chemo that I did, I had some kind of complication. When I was pregnant, it would put me into preterm labor. They'd have to ship me to stop the labor, you know. After I had delivered her, it was my counts were too low. We had to wait. It was mouth sores that were so painful. I mean, we're talking bumps inside, all down my throat, that were so painful I could barely eat or drink, and which caused weight loss, dehydration, which landed me back at MD Anderson's ER. Love MD Anderson. And so it was just, you know, kidneys weren't functioning well, just all kinds of complications that chemo causes. And the one that really stands out to me the most of all of that, all the complications, is I woke up one morning and my motor skills were gone. So like what we're doing, I talk with my hands and just talking, gone. And I was like, oh my gosh, is this the new Tracey? Like, is this me? Is this going to be me the rest of my life? My mom, my parents having to care for me. I mean, I was so scared. So back to MD Anderson's ER. Come to find out, I was just what we call overdosed on chemo. I shouldn't have been hit with chemo as soon. They should have probably waited. I was hit with chemo just a little too much. My body needed a little bit more time to recover. And it was as simple as just giving me some pills to reverse it. But that was scary. I mean, I was in a hospital and I couldn't speak, and they bring in a neurologist and he's showing me cards like, do you know what this is? And I'm like, yeah, I know that's a bird. Yeah, I know that's a house, but I can't tell you that I know that's a bird, that I know that's a house. I mean, so it was just like, my ultimate struggle. Out of everything I have gone through, that was my ultimate struggle. And I've gone through things like I tried to commit suicide as a teenager, obviously teen pregnancy and teen marriage, teen divorce, anything, insecure, facts of just depression. I call them situational depression. I've just gone through so much. But that was my ultimate struggle. And so just everything I'd gone through, I finally said, you know, each round of chemo, getting worse and worse and worse. I think I had 2 to 3 rounds of chemo left. And I went to my doctor and I said, I'm done. Like, you guys are killing me. I physically feel like I'm slowly dying. I cannot do any more chemo. Now, I'm not saying that I recommend that people go against what their doctors say, but I am a huge advocate that we know ourselves and we know our bodies better than our doctors. And I had to listen to my heart and my spirit and my body. And all of those things are telling me that chemo was killing me. And if I did one more round, I was going to die. And so when I went to him and said, I'm done, I was expecting him to throw a fit. No, you can't be done. And he was just like, yeah, you're not too crazy to stop chemo. I've kind of treated you a little longer than most people. So I'm like, okay. Obviously, that was the right call for me. Here I am almost 20 years later. But I am a huge advocate. Listen, our bodies, I really, truly believe that our bodies are always trying to speak to us, and it's up to us to listen. And that's what I did. So that's really my cancer story, which has led, well, hold on, let's finish with a happy ending, y'all, okay? We got to have the happy ending. So about a year after chemo, divorced and everything, I go back to church and I meet this guy and we start dating, and 4 weeks later he proposes, and I'm like thinking, oh my gosh, I almost call it off because I'm so scared and he just seems too good to be true. But I'm like, no, I'm gonna, it's worth it. He seems like a great guy. 4 weeks engaged, a couple months after that married, and we are going on 17 years of marriage. And we have added 2 more kids to our family. And he adopted my girls, which are now his girls, back in 2008. I think he adopted them. So I always, people are like, well, would you ever go through that again? I'm like, yeah, I would. I don't wish that. I absolutely do not wish that on anybody. But going through that struggle in my life has taught me so much. And I couldn't give that up. The value that I've taken away from that struggle, I'm like, I can't give that up. So I'm like, absolutely. And especially if it means that my Prince Charming is waiting at the end of it all. Of course I would go through it again, right?
Yes.
Whew, so that is my cancer story that has led me to where I am today.
It's incredible. All that to happen in such a short amount of time. And one of the things that you say, and I will quote you, because I love it, struggles are meant to change you, but how you will change is always up to you. I love that. I love the fact that you say we're all going to go through an ultimate struggle. And I honestly believe that everyone is going through some type of struggle right now. Maybe it's not your ultimate one, but it's some type of struggle. I don't believe in, and I'm very optimistic. I love throwing rainbows and unicorns, out my ears, being happy all the time, but that's just not how life is all the time. And there's always a struggle that we go through. It's how we handle it. And I want to know, this is what she is known for, is really teaching us how to handle struggles, because we might be getting through them, but might be making life incredibly miserable. Sorry, I froze there for a minute. But I want to know about how we get through these struggles. How do we not hate life while we go through struggle? So can you share, you have a beautiful formula, and I know we'll go through pieces, but how do we manage struggle without hating ourselves or life? Yeah.
I think it's our perspective of struggle. So we're going to hate struggles if our perspective is struggles suck. Like, it's not fair. Why me? But if we have the perspective of, okay, it's hard. Let's acknowledge that struggles are not fun. Nobody says, woohoo, let's throw a party, we're struggling. But if we can have a healthy relationship with them and say, okay, it's going to be hard, but I know I'm going to grow from this. I know there's lessons to be learned. I know I'm going to be better because of it. Okay, I can do this. So it really comes down to perspective. And the thing with struggles that came to mind when you're saying we're all struggling, I always tell people, struggles are like storms. Everybody, I don't care who you are, everybody is either headed towards one, in one, or getting out of one. And that doesn't mean, you could be in your storm for 2 years. You could be in your storm for a week. You could be headed towards it for 2 months. You could be headed, because a lot of us, we do. It's different struggles. Sometimes I feel like I have times where I'm like, okay, everything's really good. Am I going to get hit with something? And that's what I always say. You're either headed towards it or getting out. Yeah. And the time frame is different for everybody. So it's perspective, really perspective. And that is what changed with me. I'm like, struggles aren't going to go anywhere. Might
Yeah.
as well start learning about them. Might as well use them in a way that serves me, you know? So that's what I did.
Absolutely. I love that, because finding purpose in them, that also doesn't mean that you can't have a bad day,
Mm-hmm.
along the journey, because I have struggled with, no, just push forward. It's going to go away. It's going to go away. Yeah, it will. And it's okay to have an occasional bad day. Did you let yourself ever have one? Because your story's incredible.
Yeah.
So,
Totally allowed myself. So in January, I had another cancer scare. And I remember it was Christmas Eve, and I knew, when they're throwing around, oncologist and CA 125 and just all these words, I'm like, I'm not done. I've done this before. Christmas Eve is right around Christmas time, and in January I had my surgery. I was mad, and I'm not somebody who gets like physically mad. I tend to I have good perspective and can pull myself back quickly, but I was physically mad. I wanted to throw myself on the floor and just throw a fit. And I walk upstairs, and then we had this huge mirror in our room, the floor mirrors, and I get a glance of myself, and I'm like, it was like, who is that in the mirror? I literally backed up, like in the movies, walked by the mirror, whoa, what? Back up, moved in closer. I'm like, so my light, my happiness, it was gone. It was all gone because I was allowing myself to marinate in fear. Because when I was 18, it was a different story. When I was 18, I didn't understand cancer. I'm like, okay, let's do this with no big deal. And everyone's looking at me like, is she going to be okay? I'm like, y'all, it's chemo. Let's do it, right? Now I know what cancer is, and I was so afraid, and I finally said, snap out of it. You've done it before. And this is one reason that I say knowing your ultimate struggle is so key. Because in January, when I was going through all of this, I'm like, do I want to go through it again? No way. Absolutely not. But I've done it. I've done it, which tells me I can do it again. And that's why I always tell people, know your ultimate struggle, because when you are struggling, you can say, wait a minute, I went through that. I can totally get through this. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy or you're going to enjoy it, but you have proof that you're strong and you can get through it. And then people are like, well, I don't know what my ultimate struggle is, or what if it gets replaced? I'm like, and it might. Mine, thankfully, so far in life has not been replaced, but it could. Your ultimate struggle absolutely could be replaced. But then again, you can do hard things, right? So you can get through it.
absolutely.
So I've had bad days. And just because I know this, or I have this knowledge, or this is what I teach, or this is what I wrote about, doesn't mean I'm perfect. I am very honest in my book. I'm like, y'all, I am first and foremost a student of these teachings.
Yeah.
That's like, honestly, I'm constantly, I'm struggling. I'm like, oh my gosh, where's my formula? I need my reminders. I need, what kind of struggle am I, I'm still there, and I made the formula. I wrote the book, and I'm still like, oh my gosh, where's my book?
I love that. And your ultimate struggle we should not compare struggles, right? Because your biggest feat to somebody else might be a walk in the park. And I think that's why sometimes, and I want you to touch on this, why it's important for us to share our struggles, but that might be why some people don't share their struggle, is they're like, well, I have a friend that's doing the same exact thing and they're not struggling at all with this. And I am like, so many women struggle with postpartum with babies, or maybe they have a hard time in different stages of motherhood or various life. So can you talk about the importance of sharing your story?
Absolutely. So there's so many different reasons, right? But the few things, like when I got this question that came to my mind was, one, so you and the other person know you're not alone, right? Just to share it. It can be, if you've already gone through it, it can be somebody else's roadmap, right? It can give hope. And for me, it builds my confidence, because it takes courage, right? To share the ultimate struggle, which takes vulnerability. And people who can be vulnerable, like, that's courage, right? And also, I'm like, and it keeps you humble. When you can remember, Oh yeah, I remember that one time I was bankrupt and now you're a millionaire, right? It kind of keeps you humble and stuff. So there's so many reasons. But for me, my biggest one and what I really speak on is I love helping people. So for me, and it could be different. It's totally okay if it's different for everyone. But for me, it's like it fulfills me and warms my heart to know that I can help somebody else.
No, absolutely. I think that is the really, you want to get somewhere in life, other people are going to help you get there. You know, you help others, they'll get you to where you want to be. You help them get where they want to be. We're all in this together. Nobody's in the boat by themselves. Yeah. So I love that perspective. Now, when we're in the story and we're struggling through it, though, sometimes we can be ashamed of it. Like, I wish I was handling this better. I'm ashamed that I have this problem. Or, you know, say it's not a physical thing, it's an emotional struggle. And they don't want to share it. And I know we'll touch on this right after with the formula, but how do they work with that when they're ashamed of the story that they're in? That's happened to them. Yeah.
I think it's understanding why. Why are you ashamed of it? And I think a lot of us are ashamed because social media, right? Social media is so much everybody's highlight reel. And so then we start comparing, well, Susie Q and Sally Sue have a perfect life and they're always smiling and they're always this and they're always that. So is that normal? And maybe me feeling this way isn't normal. Like, it's just a dialogue, right, in our head. And so we have to understand that social media is just a glimpse. I'm on social media, and for me, it is very important that I'm real. Yes, I'm going to share, oh my gosh, guys, my book's on it, Amazon, or all these things. But I also share, like in January, I shared that. Y'all, I am angry right now. And I am this and I am that. Now, I don't share in a way that's negative and pulls people down. I think there is a way to share the hard things. But here's what I'm learning, or here's what I'm doing to help, right? That's adding value. So I think it's important that we remember that, highlight reels, and then of course have enough courage to be somebody who knows how to post on social media about the hard times without pulling people down, which I had to learn how to do that. For me, there was this self-imposed pressure that I had to live up to a certain standard, that I had to be perfect. And I don't know I don't think anyone else really put that on me. That's why I call it self-imposed, because especially women who maybe run in the circles that we're in, at faith-based and stuff. I think that there really is a self-imposed pressure. And so that pressure keeps us in that shame. We think we're the only ones. Nobody else has experienced this. Okay, not true. Yeah. And then in my book, I talk about how we can have different struggles that actually create the same feelings. So even though I may not understand your struggle, your feelings are universal. Feelings are universal that I can relate to. And so different struggles, same feelings. And we feel embarrassed, right? There's the embarrassment of it. We don't want to be judged. We don't want people to think less of us. But if you go back to the whole vulnerability and courage, when I see someone on social media, not in a whining and complaining, because that's icky, right, kind of way, but when they're just very honest, and people don't realize this, when you're reading, for me at least, when I'm reading people's stuff on social media, I know if it's where it's coming from. I know if it's coming from ego and pride. I know if it's coming from the heart. It's just the way people word things. And so when people share that, I have nothing but respect for them. I'm like, that took some guts to be real like that and share that. So I hope that answered your question. I mean, there's so many, right? So many different reasons why. And
I love that fact of that feelings are universal. I've never thought about it that way, that I can be more sympathetic and empathetic to others without going through something similar, because maybe my journey took me on the same emotional journey that you're going through physically or spiritually or whatever you're doing. I like that. And hopefully that resonated with other women, because sometimes we don't know what to say when somebody's going through a hard time, or when a spouse or myself, but we probably have experienced it emotionally. So I think that's a
And
highlight.
you may not know my pain, but you know pain.
Yeah.
And that's what we can relate to.
Yes, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. That touched me a lot. So if you could share a little bit of this formula, how do we get through things? I know it's throughout the entire book, which her giveaway is 3 chapters of the book. People, wow, you're definitely going to be immediately going to Amazon, buying the book after you read those 3 chapters. So tell us more about this formula that you've created.
Okay. So with having gone through all the struggles that I had gone through and deciding, okay, it's time to get comfortable, I did do some research. I did do some reflection, and I was very intentional with it all. And through all of that, I discovered that there were what I call the 3 universal struggles. Universal meaning everybody, regardless of who you are, status, income, any of that, will experience struggles from these 3 categories. So the first one I call self, meaning self-inflicted pain by one's own actions. Now, it takes putting pride and ego aside to admit that it was our actions, right, that caused us to struggle. And I'm the first one to say, hey, I have gone through so many, especially when I was younger, struggles that I had brought on myself because of the choices I was making. Yeah. So that's the first one. The second one I call others, meaning pain inflicted on you due to the actions of others, right? Which it happens, cheating spouse, someone gets behind the wheel drunk and kills your loved one. There are things that can cause us pain that we didn't do anything, but were caused from other people's actions. And a lot of time what I find with a victim mindset is people want to say, it's always their fault. They always bring me pain. I'm not responsible. And I'm like, okay, well, let's think about this for a minute. If that's true, let's ask ourselves, why are you hanging out with people who cause you so much pain? And if we go a little deeper, it really is self. It is your fault because we, if we choose, are surrounding ourselves with people that we know cause us pain. So that kind of falls back into self. We are choosing who we hang out with, right? And then the third one I call life, meaning pain inflicted on you at no one's fault, right? Just life happens, like my cancer. It wasn't my eating habits. It wasn't my choices. There was nothing that I did to bring that on. I'm not a believer in, oh, what did she do to be punished with that? That doesn't exist. It just happened, right? And with that one, sometimes you just got to roll with the punches, right? And so I have a couple of just very simple, basic questions. Because when we're struggling, it's so important to be able to identify which type of struggle, which type of universal struggle we're dealing with, because we're gonna approach them differently. How we handle it will be different. And so for self, did I bring this upon myself, right? We gotta look in the mirror. We can't point fingers. We have to be honest. What do I have in this, And if so, what can I do differently to avoid it in the future? So I'm not a big advocate for avoiding struggles because you just can't. Yeah. But I do think there are struggles that we bring upon ourselves that are unnecessary, right? Especially when either us, I'm sure I've been guilty of it, or loved ones, it's like a repeated struggle. They're like on that wheel of just going through it over and over. And you're like, didn't you learn the first time or the second time? Yeah. Those ones are avoidable, right? We don't need to cause more harm. And so then the second question is, did someone else bring this upon me, right? You got to think about it. And if so, what do I need to do? So I have found that most times if it's somebody else had brought the struggle upon me, there are typically 3 things I need to do, usually all together. The first one is maybe I need to have a conversation with them about what is and isn't acceptable in my life. The second one is sometimes we just need to put people at arm's length. Right? I am okay with loving people from a distance. And then the third one is maybe we need to let them know what our boundaries are so they know not what is crossing a boundary. I think oftentimes we are upset because Sally Sue and Aunt May crossed a boundary, but they didn't know it was a boundary. And we're like, what common sense says it's a boundary. Okay, not everybody has common sense, right? And so we will always want to get mad because they should have known. Well, common sense says they should have known. Yeah. But we have to be responsible and say, okay, that's not okay. You can't do that in my home. You can't do that in my, like, you know. So usually those are the three things. And then when it's life, you just gotta roll the punches, right? But what can we do to make it better? And so when I'm struggling, I always say, like the thing in January, I had an ovarian tumor, borderline tumor, which it could have been ovarian cancer, but wasn't. Again, that is a struggle that I went through. That was a life struggle. That has nothing to do with my actions or anybody else's. So those are the three universal struggles. But then I came up with 7 reminders that I use when I'm struggling. Would you like me to share those?
Yes.
Okay. All right, the first one, you are not meant to go through struggles alone. Who are you leaning on at this very moment that is helping you get through it? Oftentimes, going back to shame, we don't want people knowing that we're going through this struggle. But I have found that people generally want to help. People generally have a good heart. Now, we are not going to go plaster our dirty laundry all over social media. We are not going to go to Target and tell the lady in the line what's going on in our marriage, right? So we want to go to trusted sources, a church leader, a best friend, a spouse, a parent, a therapist, people that we trust. You have to trust them. Those are the people we want to rely on when we're struggling. I know I've been guilty of, like with my struggle in January, my mom is a busy woman. She's raising grandkids. Just a busy in school and working. And my husband, when I found out that it could be cancer, was actually out of town, and I couldn't get a hold of him because he was on a lease, a hunting lease, and there's no reception. I was like, oh my gosh, like who am I going to lean on? Me, myself, and I. Why me, myself, and I? Oh, my mom's busy. I don't want to stress her out. If I mention cancer, she's going to freak out. Like, she's been through it already with me. Like, we start to play this story. And I wasn't going to bug my mom. Yeah, she's a busy woman, but she loves me.
Yeah.
I'm her daughter. She wants to be there for me, you know? Just gotta get over ourselves, right? And just go confide in somebody. It will make us feel so much better. Number 2, do something right now that will lift your spirit. And I'm not talking about let's plan the vacation to Hawaii. Let's go tour Europe. That's going to make me feel better. I'm talking small things. It's the small things that will make us feel better. For me, I love KSBJ. It's Christian music. It's not boring. Where I live, it's very upbeat. I remember one time, so when I drive, I like my music loud. And when I get out of the car, I don't turn my music down. I just shut my husband gets into my car, and I have KSBJ on, and he's like, what is this? Because it can sometimes sound like rap, but it's about God, and it's uplifting, and it's because that's the kind of music I like. I like the hard beats and the pounding music. And he's like, oh my gosh, what are you listening to? I was like, whoa, buddy boy, do not judge my music. This is Christian music. Like, this is good stuff, you know? And then he started listening to the words. I was like, okay. Exercise. Something that I've done for the past 4 years is I'm actually a group fitness instructor. So I know a little bit about exercise. Exercise is for everybody. Now, the type of exercise, that's a little different, right? You don't have to go to the gym. You don't have to do CrossFit. Maybe it's just taking your dog on a walk. Maybe you're going to dedicate, an hour to clean, and you're going to notice that heart rate start to elevate, right? And you're breaking a sweat. Like roller skating. Roller skating is a thing now. I want rollerblades, but I can't find them anywhere. Bike rides. Just get exercise, right? There's so much research and science behind how that will elevate our mood. Again, for me, something shower. I know it sounds so silly, but taking a shower, sometimes I shower 3 times a day. I know it sounds intense, but when I'm teaching on those days, I shower before my class, I shower after, and I live in Texas. So sometimes I'm just showering before I go to bed because it's just hot, and I'm sweating throughout the day. I make my bed every morning, about 95% of the time. The only time I don't is if I'm sick, a kid's sick, and they climb on my bed, or, someone's sick and climbing in bed, or I'm washing my sheets or something. But making our bed is such an easy little task that for me, I'm like, okay, I feel accomplished. My room is nice. On to the next task, right? So it's such a small thing, but it really helps. Books, podcasts, anything that will feed our mind good stuff. That is all stuff we want to do. So you don't need to take the vacation to feel good. I'm talking, find the small things to start your day off. And it's different for everybody, and that's okay. Those are just a few of examples that work for me. But whatever it is that will lift your spirit, lift your mood, we don't always want to do it. But when we do it, we're never going to regret that we did it. So just do it. Number 3, this is for you, not against you if you choose. So lean in and search for the lesson it has to offer. Again, this means putting pride and ego aside. I believe that every struggle we go through, there is something that we can learn from it. Sometimes it's a lot of lessons, like my cancer. I feel like my cancer story and everything I've been through, I'm still learning stuff from it. And sometimes the smaller ones, it's just a smaller lesson, right? Just maybe it's a reminder we get. And oftentimes, like with my cancer, I was in such a big storm. I couldn't see clear. I couldn't think clear. I wasn't going to learn any lesson in it. So for me, I have found that the bigger the storm, the bigger the struggle, usually we have to be a little bit removed from it to learn the lesson. And that's okay. I always tell people, it doesn't matter when you learn the lesson, whether you're in the struggle and you learn it or you're out of the struggle and you learn it. Just learn something, because I believe that when we don't learn something from it, it's kind of a waste. And I got to the point where I'm like, I'm done wasting my struggles. I want to put my struggles to use. I don't want to feel used by my struggles anymore. I want to use them to serve me to grow. So it's just leaning in, being intentional. A few ways that I do that is when I was coming up with a formula, because it came over time, was trial and error, right? I rate myself. I know it sounds weird, but I rate myself. How did I do in that struggle? What could I have done better? Okay, I'm gonna do that better next time that comes up. What did I do right? That next time I struggle, I should probably do that again, right? So it's just being intentional and asking ourselves questions. We'll learn the lesson. And honestly, I believe deep down, we all know the lessons we need to learn. Nobody needs to tell us. We know. Okay, so number 4, this will make you stronger. Put that on repeat. I'm a huge advocate for pep talks. Like, what goes in here matters. If we're putting like, this sucks, why me? I don't deserve this. Well, nobody deserves it, right? And all these things, that's just trash going in. Trash is going to come out. Like, it's okay to be your own cheerleader. It's okay. So for me, it's remembering, okay, this is going to make me stronger. I may not know how. I may not know when. It may not be for a while, but this will serve me. I'll be better because of it. Number 5, we talked about this. Remember that one time you got through, you can do it. So this is where we want to be able to know our ultimate struggle so that we can say, okay, Tracey, you got through cancer all those years ago. You're pregnant. Your husband left you. Okay, if I did have cancer in January, you're happily married. You like all these things, like you can do it. You can do it. So know your ultimate struggle. Number 6, focus on a solution to the struggle. Oftentimes, I think we want to focus on the struggle itself. I am a huge believer that what we focus on grows. It just does, right? And so if we focus on the struggle itself, it's going to get bigger. So maybe in the beginning, what seemed to be, a small struggle, a medium struggle to you, now feels massive because you focused so much energy on it that it got bigger, right? Watering that plant. And so it's just, okay, yes, acknowledge it. Don't be naive. Acknowledge this is a struggle, this is hard, but what can I do? Let's start to focus on a solution, on action steps, on the reminders, on all the stuff to make it better. And then number 7, this is the last one. And honestly, this is probably one of my favorites, is use what you went through to help somebody get through. I just feel like, and I've been through a lot, I just feel like I've gone through all this stuff and I've acquired all this knowledge. And how selfish would it be if I hoard it all? I'm like, nope, I'm not going to share my lessons I learned. I'm not going to share my formula. I am not going to share how I get through my struggles. To me, that is just very selfish. And so I love sharing with other people, hey, I've been there, right? This is what I did. this is what's worked for me. I hope it works for you. And so I love being able to do that. And honestly, when I'm struggling and it's really hard, I'm like, I just don't know. That is one of the reminders that I'm like, one day I'll be able to help somebody else get through this. I just got to get through it myself right now, right?
Yeah.
So those are the reminders. And, you know, that's the universal struggles, the reminders. And then my formula, simply put, is this, okay? Struggle plus reflection. We got to reflect on our struggles if we want to learn a lesson, equals the lesson. So struggle plus reflection equals our lesson. When we apply that lesson to our lives moving forward, that just means we're growing as human beings. And for me and everyone I know, growth equals progress. So progress equals happiness. I know for me, that's where I don't need to be perfect. Perfect is not, that drives me crazy actually. I've been down that road, it doesn't work. But as long as I'm progressing, I'm happy, I'm doing good. So I always tell people, so simply put, if you work your struggles, if you use my formula, struggles can actually equal happiness, but you got to do the work. It takes work.
Oh my goodness. People, there was no more room, so I was just writing on the side. When I'm taking notes, you ladies better be taking notes. Oh my word. I loved all of the 7 steps, thinking that it's going to make it stronger and focusing on the solution. Oh, so much goodness there. Thank you, Tracey. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
So as I was saying earlier, Tracey, her giveaway for all of you ladies is the first 3 chapters of her book. So remember, click the link below and you'll be able to get that email, address, etc. Now, where else can they find you, Tracey? I know that you travel a lot because you're known as a speaker, but tell them where they can find you on social media, website, etc.
I am all over the place. So Facebook, you know, Tracey Ferrin. I keep it easy. I keep it simple. Instagram, Tracey Ferrin. Just kind of, I've been on LinkedIn for a while, but I'm starting to kind of like, okay, maybe I should explore that. So I went and revamped my LinkedIn page. I'm on LinkedIn, Tracey Ferrin. Really just Tracey Ferrin everywhere. My website, Tracey Ferrin. And then I discovered TikTok a few months ago.
Oh.
And I actually really love it over there. My videos are funny, but I do throw in inspirational stuff, you know, tips to do and all kinds of stuff. So again, Tracey D. Ferrin, I'm having fun over there. So you just Google my name and stuff will pop up.
Excellent, excellent. Now, wrap it up. Give them one tip for today that they could do during COVID, because that honestly, everyone's struggling with that. I don't know a single person that it hasn't affected your life in some way. So how would you wrap up how to handle that struggle? Go through the steps or whatever you think, just on a last note. What would Tracey Ferrin say?
On how to handle COVID?
On handling anything right now.
Use those formula and just like, none of us know how to navigate, right? We're figuring out how to navigate life. My kids, by the time they go back to school, would have been home for 6 months. 6 months they would have been home. So instead of just throwing our hands up and calling it quits and being like, well, I'll start getting back into the world and functioning when everything goes back to normal. It's never going to go back to normal. It's never going to go back to the way it was before. That's the thing about struggles. Struggles are meant to change us, right? But how is that to us? Moving forward, it's going to be a little different. So yes, it's going to be uncomfortable. Yes, it's going to be hard. I've gone through it as a speaker. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't go speak in front of people. What am I going to do? I had about a week or 2 where I was freaking out. I'm like, my life is over. I spent all this time on my book and it's worthless. And podcast, virtual summits, right? There's a way to figure it out. So don't throw your hands up. It's going to be uncomfortable. Stay in it. Think outside the box. Just keep going. This COVID thing will end and will be so much better because of it. And I am personally excited to see how everything is going to kind of change. Like the speaking world is changing, right? And so it's going to be interesting to see how everything changes moving forward.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much again, Tracey. As always, go follow her. You want this upbeat content all day long. So go follow her and get it. And we'll be back tomorrow with another Just Own You episode. Share this with your family and friends because I don't know a single person that's not struggling with something. So don't forget to share because other women need it. Have a great day.